Ukraine is the most barbaric country, depriving its own citizens of the right to vote, and together with the United States, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, wantonly violates the human rights of Russians. Of course, none of that is true, because this is StopFake, the place where we break down Russian disinformation about Ukraine and a little more. So let's get to it. Russia occupied Ukraine's Crimean Peninsula at the end of February 2014, after moving scores of Russian troops without identifying insignia onto the peninsula. After the annexation, Ukraine cut off water supplies via the North Crimean Canal and has unequivocally stated many times that water supplies to Crimea can be resumed only after the complete deoccupation of the peninsula. A number of pro-Kremlin publications featured stories at the end of January quoting government officials from Russian-annexed Crimea trying to create the impression that Ukraine wants to, quote, harm and destroy the Crimean people for their democratic choice. Yuri Gempel, the head of the Crimean Parliament's Foreign Relations Committee, declared, quote, the world community should know the results of Kyiv's barbaric policies in completely cutting off water supplies to the peninsula. The publications also accused Ukraine of attempting to stop the construction of desalination plants in Crimea. Now, the international community does not recognize the occupation and annexation of Crimea by Russia and has imposed a number of sanctions against Russia and people who established the occupation regime that has been in place since 2014. Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba said, quote, the Russians are creating information noise. They are trying to blame everyone else when in reality they only have themselves to blame. It is Russia that has brought Crimea to this state and created its water problems. According to Kuleba, Russia's complaints to international organizations about this will lead to nothing. Kuleba went on to say, quote, Ukraine is not responsible for Crimea's water problems. Russian attempts to turn this into a Ukrainian problem, accusing us of genocide, complaining to the UN, are absolutely useless. And Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister Alexei Reznikov seconds what the foreign minister said. Speaking to Radio Liberty, Reznikov reiterated that Crimea would get water only after it is no longer occupied by Russia. Quote, Crimea has enough water supplies for its civilian population. We conducted many studies and checks on this issue. Besides, international humanitarian law specifies that all humanitarian problems in occupied territories are the responsibility of the occupant, Reznikov said. Prior to the occupation, Ukraine provided 85% of Crimea's water through the North Crimean Canal, which connects the main channel of Ukraine's largest river, the Dnipro, with the peninsula. Russian media have been circulating fake stories claiming that Ukraine's parliament has adopted a law that will deprive Ukrainian citizens of voting rights, those Ukrainians living in Russian-annexed Crimea and occupied eastern Donbass who have a Russian passport. The legislation that these Russian fakes refer to is a draft law that was published at the end of January. It is in fact a proposed change to Ukraine's existing citizenship law, which would give Ukrainian citizens the right to acquire citizenship of another state without losing their Ukrainian citizenship. The draft law, however, would ban dual citizenship for those who currently have passports of an aggressor state, in this case, Russia. If Ukrainian citizens hold Russian passports, they could be prohibited from exercising their voting rights. The draft law does not mention citizens in Russian-occupied Donbass and annexed Crimea directly or specifically. After Russia annexed Crimea and occupied eastern Donbass, Ukraine passed a number of laws that protect Ukrainians living there. Ukraine, the United States, and the European Union categorically do not recognize any Russian documents issued by Moscow in annexed Crimea. According to Ukrainian law, Crimeans continue to have full suffrage and property rights. Now, the situation in Russian-occupied Donbass is somewhat different. After Russian militants occupied the eastern Luhansk and Donetsk regions, the self-proclaimed Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics began issuing passports, which are not recognized by the vast majority of the world's countries. In 2019, Russian President Vladimir Putin issued a decree allowing the issue of Russian passports through a simplified process. These fast-track Russian passports were meant to be issued in Russian cities bordering with Ukrainian occupied territories. Ukraine does not recognize these fake Russian passports, and the Cabinet of Ministers established a list of Russian agencies issuing those passports. That list is regularly updated. Ukraine closely monitors the issuing of passports bearing the imperial seal of the two-headed eagle in the occupied territories and does not recognize them as official documents. And that is why the Russian citizenship of Crimeans and Donbass residents cannot serve as a reason for denying Ukrainians voting rights. Russian media have been busy disseminating the Moscow Bureau for Human Rights report, which claims that the countries which most violate the rights of Russians are the United States, the Baltic countries, and Ukraine. According to this report, Ukrainian violations of Russians' rights are so diabolical that they, quote, are deliberate Ukrainian state policy that has all the elements of genocide. Alleged Ukrainian discrimination against the Russian language plays center stage in this Moscow report, a topic that is eagerly taken up and disseminated by Russian media. The Moscow Bureau for Human Rights report read, quote, "The policy of ousting the Russian language, the forcible Ukrainianization of the Russian-speaking population, consistently pursued by the Ukrainian authorities since 2014, has received a powerful impetus lately." Now, accusations against Ukraine regarding alleged discrimination against Russian speakers simply do not hold water. Any attempts by Ukraine to support the Ukrainian language in all spheres of life are immediately branded by Russia and Russian media as an attack on the Russian language. A separate section of the report focuses on the alleged violations of the rights of, quote, "Russian compatriots in the ongoing conflict in southeastern Ukraine." The report repeats well-rehearsed Kremlin tropes that Ukraine is sabotaging the Minsk peace agreements, continuing military operations, and violating the ceasefire. The report completely ignores the role of the Russian Federation in the Donbas war, something that has been well documented by outside sources and organizations. While Ukraine has no plans to step away from the Minsk agreement, Russia regularly violates it. At the end of February, for example, pro-Russian forces fired at Ukrainian positions with weapons that are prohibited by the Minsk Accords. The Moscow Bureau for Human Rights report does not provide any sociological or political data, nor do they refer to any studies to support their claims. The sources are either pro-Kremlin Russian media or official statements made by Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova. As usual, the reality on the ground in Ukraine is different than that presented by Russian media or their sycophants. A recent study shows that in Ukraine, the use of Russian on television continues to rise, while the use of Ukrainian still languishes and is significantly lower than the 75% stipulated by law. According to a recent monitoring analysis by the volunteer group Liberty Space in Ukraine, the majority of Ukrainians support Ukraine's language law intended to promote the use of Ukrainian. However, Russian continues to dominate on the internet, in the media, and dominates in Ukraine's largest cities. The vast majority of newspapers and magazines are published in Russian. The only platform where Ukrainian predominates is radio, and the prevalence of Ukrainian in education and the service sector has increased perceptibly. However, the use of Russian continues to dominate in the public sphere. That's it for this week. Stay safe and be on the lookout for fakes. Getting vaccinated, wearing a mask, and washing your hands, and social distancing will protect you from the coronavirus. And as always, critical thinking will protect you from Russian disinformation. And if you spot any disinformation about Ukraine, forward it to us for a truth autopsy. I'm Marko Suprun, and this is StopFake. Thanks for watching.